Welcome back. We just finished recording episode 4 of Mohammad Alam podcast with Armando, who is a market director, compliance officer for large healthcare. It took him over 10 years to get to that position. And in this podcast, he talks about curiosity, about drive, about moving between different countries and learning new languages and being markedly ahead of his peers at such a young age. You're definitely not going to want to miss this episode. Please tune in and remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. So, market director for compliance, what does that entail?
It entails a lot. It's a little bit difficult to pinpoint exactly what a market director is in compliance. I do work for a large hospital system.
Okay.
Um, a lot of it, anything from what you can think of physician relationships with looking at our contracts, agreements, and so many other things. In that role, you have to work with a lot of the executive teams at every hospital.
Okay.
um, just to make sure they are supported. Any questions they may have as far as guidance goes, interpreting policies, being that connection to our legal partners as well is something that a compliance officer does in general. As a market leader, it's the same thing, but times a lot, right? Still times six, for example.
Okay. So, how does someone even get into that sort of position from like the get-go? What kind of pathway do they have to follow and what was your struggles getting to that position?
That's a great question. So I started many, 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 many years ago. I interned at a hospital.
Okay.
So a little bit of background. I back in when I was in my early college days, I was a bio major.
Okay.
So I wanted to go into medical school. I was doing other prerequisites. I was so ready to take the MCAT. I was at
Yeah.
that step. So I don't know what something happened. I went to one of my internships at one of the hospitals there, um, and just the experience being on the clinical side and shadowing one of the physicians. Not sure if that interaction with that physician sort of made me change my mind,
Right.
but something did that I said, I still want to be in healthcare, help people, but I want something different.
Right.
So it's just
Something that
something triggered and said, look, what about administration?
okay.
I think there's more to healthcare than being on the clinical side. And one of the things that I think really um, had a big impact growing up is my parents didn't speak English.
Okay.
So a lot of times when I used to go to clinics or their primary care uh, physician visits, I would have to be the interpreter.
Right.
A lot of times I remember that I would hear some of the folks in the clinic, they would tell the doctor one thing when it wasn't really what my parents were telling them. So I would have to be that, interpreter at 10 years old, 11 years old, trying to
Figure out.
figure out, not really knowing the lingo that goes into healthcare, but trying to explain it as best as I could as an 11-year-old. So that I think at an early age, I wanted to be in healthcare for that reason. I would always say I want to be in healthcare so I can make a difference and really maybe help in some shape or form. That's an 11-year-old talking, right?
How
But
does an 11-year-old even start to think about things like that? I mean, when I was 11 years old, I was just playing video games. And you're here, translating, very complex medical jargon.
see, I don't know if it was because I'm the oldest in the family.
Okay.
And so I was born in the US, but when I was 2 years old, we moved to Mexico.
Okay.
So I grew up there for a couple of years. And coming back to the States, not knowing the language, I was about 9 years old. So it took me, quite a while to adapt and to learn the language. Um, so I think just from that early age, I would see things a little bit differently.
Hmm.
It was always inculcated that I had to sort of think a little bit bigger, a little bit mature. Of course, I play video games too, and until now, I have my once in a while sessions in gaming. But I think at that age, it sort of gave me a lot of responsibility that it sort of made me think a little bit different, right? So I would see things a little bit different. I would see things as, I have to start thinking ahead. How am I gonna make a difference and sort of, make my parents proud. That is one of the big things that as a Hispanic, we sort of think about, how can I make my parents proud? So I would, see those situations in healthcare that I say, I got to do something in healthcare. Then in college, okay, clinical is not my thing. Let me
Right.
go administration. And So that's where I'm at right now. I mean, it took a while to get there. Um, I was very fortunate that my in my bachelor's degree, we had internship opportunities. We could
Okay.
go to hospitals and intern and really showcase what we know, and we would learn a lot in those internships. And then that's how I was, I think, very fortunate that I had really good mentors throughout my career that saw something in me that said, let me give this kid an opportunity and learn more. And I started interning at a hospital. From there, I got a position as a clerical assistant and then coordinator for a department. And over the years, just
Slowly worked your way up.
mhm.
So that must have been a big shift for you from like being born in America and then shifting to a different country and then shifting back to. Did you notice a lot of like differences that you like from one place and like from another, but you combine them two to help you kind of foster that care?
I think it was a really good foundation. I mean, I'm not going to deny that just coming back to the States and having to learn English and, I think at that time, I didn't really see a lot of programs for students
Okay.
that would sort of help. Maybe there were, I didn't even know about them, but that would help some of these students transition knowing a different language other than English
Mm.
into learning English. One thing I did notice is that in Mexico, the curriculum is very different. So by the time you are maybe 8 years old, you already know how to multiply. So you have some math that's way ahead than students in the States.
Really?
They're just starting to. I remember when I was in my fourth grade class, they were doing some like timetables and some multiplications,
Wow.
divisions. When in Mexico, you learn that in the first grade,
So there's significant
right?
parts where they're much more ahead. Why do you think that is?
So my theory, this is my theory. In Mexico, you gotta pay for school. There's no public school. You gotta pay for school since you kindergarten,
Since you're
elementary
born?
school. You pay for that. So I think maybe in Mexico, maybe that's my guess. They try to put in as much as they can on the student
As early
from
as
early as
possible?
possible because maybe they're not gonna be able to afford going into middle school or high school. Because even for middle school, like here in the States, my middle school was a couple of blocks away. In Mexico, I remember the closest middle school, you had to take a bus.
Wow.
So I think a lot of people go to elementary school, then they cannot afford for whatever reason, and it's much more difficult, right, to go into even a middle school. So I think teachers over there they try to
Maximize.
maximize as much as possible,
So it kind of shows you that the human potential is is far, more past than what we can think, right?
right?
So if you're teaching first graders, timetables, whereas here we think that no, that's suited for fourth graders, it really shows that the human potential is far further there than we think.
Yeah, and maybe that's my experience, but that's how I just sort of going back and thinking it through. I had a teacher in fourth grade that he would, I mean, I was, still learning the language, but he saw me so advanced in math that he started pulling geometry books that you
Wow.
normally teach a sixth grader, trigonometry. He's like, this is from one of my sisters that's currently in, I think he said high school. You want
Wow.
to learn this on your recess? 'Cause I wouldn't want to go, that maybe I was a big nerd, but I wouldn't really go to recess. I would like to stay in class
And just study.
and just study. That's one way I think I would practice English more. I would go
Okay.
into these programs. I remember there was one program in my class where you would click on different items. It will read them to you, what it was, like a table, a chair, like things like that, very
Yeah.
basic. And I would spend my recess and lunch doing that because
Wow.
I was just so, I need to learn the language faster. And then when it came to like math, in elementary school, they separate sessions like in the morning, we're going to do math, in the afternoon, we're going to do English. So for the time they were doing math, since I was already ahead of that, he would just give me a trigonometry book here. Just open page for this to this, read it, tell me what you think, and we'll go over it
Wow. So you were far ahead of your peers at the time, and even your
in
focus
math.
was, I mean, it starts in these aspects, and even then you were more focused on like improving yourself at such a young age. And
Right.
that was, how old were you at that time? Like 9 years old?
About 10,
10.
9, 10.
And so that was also the kind of the element where you were the medical translator for your
Right.
parents, switching between multiple different languages. So it sounds like you had to go through a lot of struggles to get to, where you were today. If you could go back in time and see what programs you would think would help other people in your situation, because it sounds like you paved your own road.
Hmm. Sometimes I think just looking at what your options are in school. There was a program that I signed myself into. I even like signed for my parents. I didn't know that. So they had like a Saturday program. I
Okay.
remember this. I was like 10 years old, and I told my mom it was for like extra credit that I had to go. But in reality, it was really like very, very. Nobody was going. I was like one out of the like six students that was in that class.
Wow.
But I signed myself to do like I forgot what they called it, but it was like review of basic English or grammar.
Okay.
I forgot what the class was called, but I took that class just so I can have that extra like tutoring per se on
Nice.
Saturdays. And I mean, there's programs out there, but I think a lot of it has to do with just being curious. And if you see an opportunity, I think I'm a big believer that there's always an opportunity to grow.
Okay.
So that's how I kind of treated my whenever I had something that I was challenged by. Let me see if there's a way. There should be something out there that I can do to better that piece. I think it's just about being curious and
Right. So it comes from within, this curiosity that then propels people forward.
yeah,
And you would say, I guess not everyone has that curiosity. Can we get that from somewhere, or
I think that's a great question. A lot of it has to do with I think technology now has made like I don't know if you remember. I mean, when we were younger, going outside and play was something that you would sort of look
forward to?
forward to, right? After school, let me go out and play with my friends. Now that everything's more technological, we are able to interact with other people, like but online. I think some of that drive that maybe kids would have before it's sort of gone because everything's so easy
To do
and
and to get.
attainable. Like now you can access everything on your phone. I remember I used to go to libraries
Right.
to look at like encyclopedias, like a whole wall of encyclopedias to get one thing, right? For
Right.
that homework assignment. Um, so I think a lot of it has to do with technology advancing so quickly and then sort of forgetting some of those basics, which is not bad, right? I mean, you want to make things easier over time, but you also want to keep with the basics and say, look, let me go. Well, like, what if internet is gone tomorrow, right? There's no power. How are you going to get that information?
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, now with like the advent of like these large language models like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Grok, people don't even need to open books.
Yeah,
So, I mean, my question is, have you noticed that all of this kind of loss of curiosity, this dependence on the technology has translated to, issues that you see on a kind of day to day within your workspace? Because you interact with multitudes of,
right.
problems.
I think a lot of it, sometimes I think in general, we're not looking into the details. Like in my role, I have to look into details. So there can be some fine line print that you oversee it, you missed it. I think a lot of it now, we tend to just oversee those minor details because we're so accustomed to the information just being given to us.
Okay.
Like, here you go, right? This is what you have to look at when we may miss those details. So I think it's sometimes important to step back a bit and no, don't depend too much on the technology side and focus on the basics. Like I still print out stuff and highlight.
Really?
I still do that. I think I still take notes. I have a little notebook that I carry with me all the time for my
Okay.
meetings. It's, I mean, I get it. I do transpose some of it into an electronic file so I can have it in case I lose that notebook. But it's still that pen and paper that just I can gives you a different experience and a different like time and the speed that it goes. And you can focus a little bit more in writing the
Hmm.
idea. First, when you're typing away, you're just like an autopilot.
Right. Yeah. It's like you kind of get distracted.
Hmm.
And of course, you had to succeed so many times for you to get into the position you are currently. So what you're doing is obviously working for you, and that's, amazing. Do you have any like specific or kind of general stories that you've noticed that losing this sight of, looking into the details that has caused, major chaos within a situation, or any sort of like, examples you can tell people that with the insight and wisdom that you have now that would have been, prevent any further issues?
So, I mean, I don't think nothing major has happened that I experienced. Um, One thing I do like to always emphasize is when you don't know something, don't just assume, just
Okay.
get the answer. And and it's okay not to know the answer. Either you have to surround yourself with like good mentors or good peers, but always reach. Don't just stay with the doubt. I mean, be curious. That's like my big thing. What? How can I resolve this? Or what's the answer for this? Find the answer. Maybe going back to ChatGPT, maybe that's a way. But
Right.
if you, the whole thing is just get that answer before it escalates to a situation that now it's out of your hands and you can't control.
Do you find that as a common thread of issues in your workplace that people are just assuming and, listening to hearsay, well, he said this, she said this, so it must be the truth, instead of diving deeper into it?
Not necessarily. I think just in general, there's just been situations that I can just like think right now and say, look, the answer was there, or maybe you didn't know the answer. Just you should have asked,
Right.
right? You should have asked, and it's fine. It's totally okay to be wrong, and it's totally fine not to know something. That's why you have to seek for the information. And
Right.
sort of goes back to like me not knowing the language. I could have just stayed and said, look, I'm just gonna learn the language whenever, and it's sure to just happen automatically at some point in time. But I took, I think, a little bit more action that maybe a 10-year-old wouldn't have thought about, and
Definitely.
signing up for like an extra class. Like who wants to go to school on Saturdays, right? When you're 10.
Nobody wants to go to school, period. So let alone on Saturday. So you're saying that this lack of curiosity and then this lack of drive and kind of having like a laissez-faire, like hands-off approach, um, can be kind of harmful to people. And you're noticing that more frequently in kind of today's
Uh,
day-to-day
yeah.
life.
I notice it a lot with my like younger cousins and friends.
Okay.
Um, I think just over time, again, it goes back to that whole thing, right? It's so information is so easily available that I think procrastination is a big thing that has increased
Really?
because information. I mean, if you don't before, if you needed the information, you had to like look in different places, maybe to get one answer. Now, since it's available there, you can say, I'll wait until the day before and I'll do that. Whatever that is. Like I have friends that are in school, like in college, and I often hear this. You know what? I have some homework due tonight. I'm like, it's 9 o'clock. When is it due? At 11. It's 9:15. Yeah, when I get home, what's the gonna get home? I like at 10:30.
Wow.
You have half an hour. What are you gonna do? It's just a post somewhere. But have you even read or looked at the material? No, well, I'll find it online. So it's
Right. So they're kind of like outsourcing their homework,
right in a way. Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way.
outsourcing their mental capacity. And what kind of downstream effects do you think that's going to lead to people?
In the future, I think that critical thinking aspect of things is gonna start going away because now, I mean, living, hopefully, maybe it's just a phase, but if you constantly think about it like, well, I can do it later and later, and then you don't try to learn the material or you don't try to get that answer in a way you're gonna comprehend it and just kind of last minute just submit something, that may lead to issues in the future where people are just going to be so accustomed to just being given the answer or expecting things to just resolve on their own. And at the end of the day, this is a way that I see it too. Even though you have this technology, someone had to take the time to learn how to code it, how to do all that
Right.
background work
There's a
before that
human behind
information
it.
right gets out there. And what if in the future we don't have those people that are able to do the coding, the inputting the information, because those folks grew up thinking it was just that easy.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking it, but that could be something that may come up.
So you're thinking that because there's humans behind these like chat GPTs and now we rely a lot on them, people are just going to become more and more procrastinators, which I guess would be like a kind of a lazy mentality.
Hmm.
I guess the other thing, at least for me, is like, how do we know ChatGPT is correct? Because we treat it like it's
Right.
gospel, right? We treat it
Right.
like it's divine wisdom. Um, but obviously it's not. It's just it's based off of our current knowledge,
Right.
and even the knowledge that it's based off, it's whatever it was taught.
Right.
So if it was taught that the grass is blue, then whatever it responds to what color is grass, it's always going to say blue
Hmm.
because based off its source text is, variable. So, that's kind of fascinating that you're saying that you're noticing a large, shift of people going towards that. I guess that would be the same thing with like social media and
Hmm.
iPhones and how does that play into this role? Because the chat GPTs is like, okay, I don't need to think, but then the iPhones and the Androids are like, I don't need to do. Like I'll
Right.
just be consumed in an endless like loop.
I mean, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, at the end of the day, and then just before I forget this thought, I had I have some friends that were about to like graduate and go into the workforce. And I asked one of my friends, I said, so like what do you see yourself doing after graduation? And he said, well, I'm gonna be running this company.
Hmm.
I said, okay, that's good. But why, like, how are you gonna get there? I mean, I'm gonna have a degree. I should be able to just apply and get it, right? And I'm like, That's not how it works."
Right. Yeah.
You gotta, sort of earn your stripes and
Be able to have that. You know.
like over time, right? It takes experience, it takes work. Um, so, I mean, I don't know where that thought process sort of came from. I mean, is it because it was so convenient and maybe I'm not gonna say easy because I think everybody, for someone to get a degree, it's a big accolade, right? It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of discipline, but maybe some of those areas that technology made it so easy that sort of created a mentality like I should be able to do this now
Right.
or faster without having to.
It's kind of like the Amazon instant gratification.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I mean, also now the question is it really that hard to get a degree? Because if we do ChatGPT to everything, all
So
the homework is done, maybe the study guides are made. All you have to do is kind of just show up, and some people don't even show up. It's virtual online schools. Not degrading anyone with a degree, but what I'm saying is that I think it's shifted, right?
it
So
has,
like you don't need to write, 4-page essay that takes you a week. You could do it in 10 seconds.
right? You just put a prompt
You could
and it'll
just put a
spit it out.
prompt. So then, like, the value of the degrees may almost essentially go down.
I think maybe for some, maybe. Um, the other day I learned that there was even an application because somebody told I made that comment. I said, well, you're just gonna plug in some information and ChatGPT is gonna generate it for you. Like, what was the work? And they're gonna find out if you plagiarized. That's what I said. And
Right.
they said no, because there's an application that I can copy that into it that and it's gonna change it in a way that I wrote it. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. So now it's like you didn't even do the work, and you can hide the ways to show that you didn't do the work. Now, I guess the interesting thing is that we believe that humans are getting out on top because of not needing to do the work, but there's something that they're losing
Right,
because there was the point to the homework.
right.
Right? There's a point to the essays, there's a point to all of this, and they're not getting any of that benefit.
Yeah. No, you're right. Um, and I don't know how bad that's going to affect, society in the future, where, it's that expectation that I sort of got the answer in 15 seconds and it's done. Then when it comes to like the real world, you gotta, interact with people and have ideas and exchanging thoughts and be able to sort of break apart a situation and explain it to someone else in that you're in front of. You're not gonna be able to pull your phone and chat GPT the answers. So I don't know how that's gonna get critical, where
Right.
people are gonna be able to, present information in a way that others can understand it, critically think on the spot, because that's a big thing, to be able to critically think on the spot. Unless you have done it a lot of times, and that's where homework comes in. You have to think about it and let me break this prompt and maybe cite different sources, but you
Right.
come up with the idea. And if that's gone, we know what's going to happen.
And do you think that you're seeing this as well, like the lack of critical thinking within your workplace, the lack of memory recall?
I see it more, not in my workplace. I see it more with like incoming students into the field.
Into the medical field.
Yeah, into the medical field.
And
Um,
what do you see specifically? Are these like medical students, nursing students? These are
so
administrator students?
I think in general, um, I think I see it less now just because of my role. But before I would see it a lot when I was more at the local level, where some of the students would um, sort of like that example that I gave you, they would think things were a certain way.
Okay.
Um, where they would ask me, so how did you you know get where you're at, or how did you can you give me like a good guide so I can kind of follow it. I mean, it's I think for every person it's going to be different. You got to really have to like earn your stripes, and through experience you're going to showcase, and you got to little by little just be patient. But a lot of it I would sort of get the look on their face like, oh really, I gotta do that? I'm like, yeah, you gotta do that little by little. You gotta learn the basics, then you move up and you move up, and little by little you get different opportunities.
So there's like a cognitive dissonance because you're saying that people want to get to where you are, but they don't want to do the work, or they don't expect the work to be that work.
Or just I think in maybe in general, even when I ask them, so what do you want to do? Like I have friends or students, well, I want to do maybe one example that I can think of. He wanted to be like a graphic designer.
Okay.
I forgot to for which company, but I said, okay, that's really cool. I mean, graphic design, it's I think the more and more we advance, that's gonna be one of those positions and things that people are gonna be hiring,
Right.
right? Well, so what have you done? He said, well, nothing really.
Hmm.
So how did you decide to do graphic design? 'Cause it looks cool. I'm like, okay, it looks cool, definitely. Um, but what have you done? Like, have you taken courses? Have
Right.
you? The one thing that I say, I think like things like YouTube, all these different avenues that we can get information, they're good resources. And now at least you can even get that basic knowledge from like a YouTube video.
Yep.
So I even asked, did you at least like watch a YouTube video on how to do like basic graphic design? Like, no, I mean, I mean, I've seen people that do it, but I haven't really
Tried it or done
tried
it
it or done
himself.
it. Or I'm like, that's not.
That's
eh,
not gonna get you anywhere.
So when are you expected to be like in 2 years? I'm like, no, you're behind.
Yeah. And have you noticed that often that like people just, they say that they want to do something and they think that they could just get it handed to them? Is that like a new phenomenon that may be happening in society and culture?
I think so.
Because
Uh,
I haven't really experienced this often, or seen it to your extent that you're referencing. That there's just such a like delusion between reality and expectations.
I think um, the younger students have that idea. I mean, even family that I have that are much younger than me, I would ask some of them that are like 10 years younger than me, and they have sort of that idea that it's going to be. But I mean, I can maybe tie that into because they're young, right? They also haven't really seen how things are going to be
The
working.
world.
That has to do a lot with that. Um, so I mean, maybe it's just my experience that I've seen that, but I mean, it's been very often that I've seen it,
So if
which
any of those, friends or family that's listening right now, and you could give them kind of, or even people that don't know you that have seen your success and admire, because how long would you take it took from, being that intern to where you are now? How many years and struggles and battles and
more than a decade.
more than a decade to get to the position that you're at?
Yeah, more than a decade, and then just many trials and tribulations
Yeah.
throughout.
So I guess if you could give them kind of like a few golden nuggets that you could give your younger self now that they may not realize that you're
Right.
saying that they may be up for a rude awakening.
I would say surround yourself with good mentors.
Okay.
You want to have mentors. And then don't leave something to tomorrow if you can start it today.
Okay, so no procrastination.
And then maybe the third is it's okay to make mistakes, just learn from them.
Just learn from them. Do you think where could people find good mentors? Where does that come from? Friends, family,
It can be a
teachers,
friend, family, it can be if a lot of people belong to different groups. It can be one of the like group members, it can be like religious group
right?
leader,
Okay,
it can really be
churches,
anyone. It doesn't really matter, as long as, and you should be able to at least sort of gauge if it's good advice, bad advice, throw it away, good advice, keep it. um and you're not going to have just one mentor that's going to be able to give you all the answers, right? You're
right?
going to
You
be
need
able
multiple
to
different ones. Okay.
different people that can give you that whole um overall support.
And do you think, with your sense of procrastination of if you need to do it tomorrow, do it today, how can people get over that? Because everyone would like just say, well, if I could do it tomorrow, why don't I just do it tomorrow?
Right. You know, I think a lot of us, maybe in myself too, I have that where I leave something for tomorrow and then you sort of forget about it tomorrow. But I think if it's something that you really think it's important, don't leave that for tomorrow. Start today. It can be a little something as like my graphic design friend, open up YouTube right now. Start looking at videos. Don't wait until tomorrow to open that YouTube video. Um, I mean, if it's something about like, oh, I gotta go take my clothes to the dry cleaners. I mean, maybe you can wait until tomorrow. It's not a big deal, right? I mean, pick and choose your battles.
Right.
But like things like that, if you can do it today, do it. Don't wait until tomorrow.
Do you think that like if people don't have that drive to open YouTube to learn graphic design, it may show that they just don't really want it that bad?
It could be, right? It could be. Or they haven't had enough curiosity on really learning it. I mean, that's a good point. If you're really interested in something, you're gonna seek for that information. You're not gonna wait. I think to me, from that example, it's the fact that the assurance that yes, I'm gonna be doing this, and then when I ask the question, what have you done? I haven't done anything. I think that's why it stuck to me. Like, wait,
Something's wrong.
something's wrong. Maybe you need some additional support, somebody to sort of push you. Let's go and see if they let us do like a tour of one of the Hollywood studios. Maybe you
Right,
need
yeah.
that. It could be that. Um, yeah, but
Because that's what you did, right? Like you had the motivation, you had the curiosity, you woke up on the Saturdays, you're still, grinding it out. That's probably a mix of curiosity, a mix of motivation, a mix of drive and interest. I mean, what motivates you to go to work every day with, that same level of passion that you've consistently maintained for 10 years?
I think just the curiosity. The I just want to keep learning. I always think there's always something new to learn. I think when you think you know everything, that's a problem.
It's kind of like an ego.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I think when you think you know everything, that's a problem. You always want to be asking questions. You always want to be learning from people. There's always going to be someone that knows more than you,
Right,
always, regardless where you're at. And instead of feeling uncomfortable or feeling some sort of jealousy, actually, instead ask that person, oh, tell me more. It's okay not to know something. It's actually easier to not know something because now you have something to learn,
right.
right? Something to improve upon. Um, and just, I also want to continue to make a difference. I think both on the administration side and on the clinical side, there's a big difference to make in communities that we serve. And just as a society member, I often like to, I volunteer at my, part of my alumni work is I do have some students that reach out to me for like questions, and I look at the resumes. If they're doing something right now and they have a question about like what should I be doing or what do you think, I look at this place, should I apply there? And I'm always open to that. I actually get very excited and I'm very passionate about like sharing what I've learned. I still have a lot to learn.
Right.
um, but I get very just passionate and very excited when someone is asking me look, I'm doing this, and if I maybe had that experience and I can have them avoid some mistakes that I made,
Right.
I would definitely like to share that with
Are
that
you
person.
are you open to people reaching out to you from this podcast, or would you prefer just to be remain private off of that?
I would definitely,
Is there like an email? Maybe you could send me an email. We could
yeah,
have it on the screen here.
definitely, yeah. I would like to um, answer questions, and I think as a member in society, if you can share sort of your experiences, and I think that's one of the reasons you have this podcast, right? People are gonna be able to watch it and maybe identify with it, maybe not, and hopefully get a little nugget from the podcast and
Yeah.
say maybe I should do that. That's a good idea, or maybe not. But I think in the way we're connected, we want to be able to share.
And you referenced having other people avoid the big mistakes that you've made. Could you kind of highlight some of those if you feel comfortable? What were the biggest mistakes you've made in the past decade or so that you would edge people away from?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I can remember right now is when I started college. I went in there as undecided, which is fine, undecided major. Then I went into biology, and all I was doing, I was first generation that goes to college, so I had to sort of learn the whole, what do you do, who do you talk to. I would talk to my advisor there in school, and I don't, I personally think that it wasn't much help that made me waste a lot of time. I think I wasted I could have graduated in 4 years. I graduated in five.
Hmm.
And the reason is I would just take all these classes thinking that, you just take them and you get a degree. Instead, I should have, what I advocate, done more research
Right.
instead of trusting just what I was being told. I should have questioned that a little bit more and say, wait, you're asking me to take all these classes when I'm still undecided. Why am I taking all these classes? I remember I took calculus up to like the last course they have in college. And then when I had to like finally declare a degree in healthcare administration, maybe like four of those classes were not even necessary.
Wow.
So I did all the calculus that was in that school when at the end they weren't
Unnecessarily,
even,
theoretically.
yeah,
But I mean, no knowledge goes wasted,
right.
right? So I think that's good. That's, encouraging.
But just the time spent.
So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years now that you made it to this new position?
I mean, I'm gonna continue to grow in my career path, get more experience, and I mean, we'll see.
What do you think was the biggest change or adjustment you had to make recently?
Biggest adjustment. I think just time management.
Okay.
That's a big one. I'm always been very good about managing my time, but now having more responsibilities recently in my career, I just need to better just keep that work life balance. I A lot of us say it's you gotta keep that work life balance up there, and it's very important to keep that balance, but a lot of us don't really do that. We spend maybe too much time on this on the work part, and then
Mm,
you sort of leave the life piece on the side, then you start getting so overwhelmed. So just finding that balance, I think it's one of the things I really gotta learn as I transition into more responsibilities.
wow. Wow. Do you think that you have any advice for people who see the glamour of the medical fields? Because you've maybe seen something on the inside that, people, all that they think of medicine is maybe, or nursing or whatnot, is what they see in the TV shows.
Okay. Like Grey's Anatomy
Grey's
and
Anatomy, like Scrubs, things like that.
um, it's not. I don't want to say it's very very different, but I mean it is. I mean that's a TV show, right? It's gonna have a lot of. They're gonna add drama to it. They're gonna add a lot of storytelling, a lot of it to make a show.
Yeah.
Um, there's not that much drama.
There's not that much drama. The drama is not proportional
All right.
to, what's going on. And so now that we're kind of winding down, do you have any last minute kind of thoughts or things that you would like to tell people?
I think I've said it all. I was, I think, very open and transparent. Maybe I'm forgetting a little bit things here and there that I forgot to mention, but I think just overall, it's thank you for having me.
Of
It was
course.
a great podcast. Hopefully, I if I get any people reaching out to me, I'll answer as quickly as possible, and I'm open to hearing from people and learning more and watching more of your podcasts.
I
See
hope
who your
so.
next guest is going to be.
God willing, it's going to be exciting and another adventure. Thank you so much, Armando. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you for having me.